Hello, and welcome back to day 2 of the summer series. I actually, when thinking about what to say today, realised yesterday I didn't introduce myself for those that might never have met me in person or here. So I'm Matt Manners, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Inspiring Workplaces Group. So hopefully that rights yesterday's wrong. You're not here to see me anyway. You're here to see our great storytellers this week. And yesterday was arguably our strongest opening in the past 4 years, with sessions from Bruce Daisley and Deborah Corrie. And they're now both on demand on our content section, as will all our talks go there as we have them throughout the week. As I said yesterday, Inspiring Workplaces offers all this content for free. Our community's free, our events are free, as that's part of our mission to try and help you and us change the world through the world of work. So please go discover hundreds more videos that exist there. I did also promise that we'd say a little bit about our business throughout the week. And one bit of information is that we're also the world's #1 non-survey based awards, recognising people first organisations, and that awards programme now operates right across the world, and we're open for entries in 2025. So if you're running a great place to work, then please go check out that awards program. It might just suit you. But let's get back to day 2. And following on from an incredibly strong start yesterday, we've got 2 fantastic storytellers for you today. And our first storyteller is actually managing director. Get that frog out of my throat. Managing director from H&H, our lead partner this year. And they'll be taking us through the subject of supercharging productivity through internal communications. And before we welcome that speaker, I also just want to say that their idents at the beginning of each session have just got better over the 4 years too. They're absolutely fantastic and really give that summer feel. So without further ado, please welcome to the summer series, Cathy Phillips.
Thanks very much, Matt. Thank you very much for that glowing introduction. That was very kind.
Sorry, I tripped over a few words there, but I'm going to leave you to it, and I will see you again shortly.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us today. It sounds like a brilliant day yesterday, so I look forward to talking you through our little presentation. So without further ado, trust the process. It's more than just a catchphrase you see on social media. This is kind of a mindset that's essential for anyone who's looking to achieve growth or self-improvement. And it's a powerful reminder that regardless of how things unfold, you'll always reach your goals if you've got that right foundation and clear vision. And I hate to mention it, but think back to 2020. We were kind of thrust into lockdown, weren't we? Forced to adapt and transform our businesses almost overnight, and all from the confines of our homes. We had no choice but to trust that process as we fundamentally changed how we worked. And each step, each makeshift desk that we produced showed us that we can not only survive, but thrive in really unexpected ways. So today we're going to take the learnings from that lockdown experience and dive into how trusting the process can drive success and innovation, even in the most uncertain of times. And when we made that shift in 2020, we never looked back. But the reality is, looking back is exactly what some CEOs are starting to do now. And perhaps it's a touch of rose-tinted glasses and some wistful memories of what life was like in the old days, kind of when we were all hanging around the office and crowding around flip charts and covering every surface with Post-it notes. Could it be that trust in the process has flipped to mistrust in the process? Well, according to KPMG, 64% of CEOs predict that people will have returned back to the office full-time by 2026. They feel that remote working has hampered productivity, creativity, and collaboration. And who could argue with that? Well, actually, employees can. When People Management surveyed 2,000 UK office workers, 73% of them claimed to be more productive when working from home. And we did some research for a white paper on culture and actually found similar results too. So who's right? Well, we don't know right now. The results are so mixed and the debate still rages and the evidence still continues to add weight to both sides. We know that remote working isn't feasible for everyone, nor does it float everyone's boat. It requires discipline, good time management, self-initiation and focus, and they're qualities that don't come naturally to everyone. Some people are happy not to have those qualities at all, let's be honest. But in reality, for many organisations and for IC teams, this is about creating a balance, an environment where both can thrive. And we believe that the challenges that come from working remotely are not going to be solved by simply ordering everybody back into the office. And even though instinctively we feel that people may be physically more productive, conversations flow easier when they're side by side, and that ideas get bounced around more frequently, and that naturally produces productivity. Is that actually the case, or is that just our perception? Back in 2018, so pre-lockdown, the Royal Society did some research observing office workers as they moved from cubicles, if you remember those, to an open plan setup. They attached sensors, which sounds a bit kind of matrix-like, but they attached these sensors to the employees so they could track the number and nature of interactions before and after the move. And the assumption was that by moving those physical boundaries, in other words, knocking down those walls, it would naturally lead to more face-to-face interactions. But the results were a bit of a shocker. In-person interactions actually dropped by 72% in the open plan environment, while sending emails shot up to 56%. Absolutely not the results they were expecting. But when you think about the science, it starts to make sense. And it all comes down to psychology. As humans, we're hardwired to connect with each other. But on balance, we equally seek psychological privacy. And we make sense of our environment by breaking it up into modules, because we can't, in our brains, process too much information at once. It becomes too overwhelming if we try. So an open plan office with all of those sounds, scents, movements around is a bit like being in a kind of neon lit 90s nightclub, if you're young enough or old enough to remember that sort of thing. So that's where you see people wearing headphones or staring intently at that screen and pretending that they're very busy to avoid being interrupted. And it's also why colleagues choose to send an email rather than stand up, go over and speak to people, even if they're only a few desks away. So that tells us that even in 2018, the majority of office workers were turning to digital devices to interact with colleagues. The figure is likely even higher now. And it makes sense. If you think about our downtime, we on average spend 2 days, that's far too much, 2 hours a day interacting with people on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. And virtual connections have become much more natural to us. And that's why dragging people back into the office isn't a magic wand that's going to make people more productive, more collaborative, and more creative. So by now you might be thinking, well, what's all this got to do with IC? Well, as internal communicators, our role is all about connecting and engaging colleagues to educate, inform, and facilitate those conversations, and to galvanise the organisation with common goals. And so I'm guessing that a bit like me, you found that quite tough when remote working first came in. That question of how to connect colleagues and forge relationships between people sitting at screens in different locations kind of got us all thinking on our feet. And digital channels and platforms became the tools of our trade. We had to get creative. And now face-to-face is back on the table. Should we all be breathing a sigh of relief and welcoming people back? For me, the virtual working world really isn't going to go anywhere fast, at least not as quickly as it landed in our desks in the first place. And in many sectors, it's actually expanding. So if as internal communicators, we're going to add value to our organisations, we need to continue to enhance the employee experience through great communication in the virtual environment. So Forbes first coined the phrase virtual intelligence, and they used it to describe the skills and behaviours employees need to work effectively through digital channels. We first came across the term when we were helping a client explore how to create a greater sense of community and shared connection across their organisation to stimulate that collaboration and reduce silo working mentality. We were fascinated by the huge impact that the remote environment was having on culture. And so we began to look at virtual intelligence through the lens of internal communications to see how we can use our influence as a community to drive the right kind of behaviours, to supercharge not only happiness and engagement for people, but also productivity, collaboration and creativity too. So in the moment, I'm going to share with you a model that we created based on this idea of virtual intelligence, which is practical and action-based, you'll be relieved to know. So you can take your best ideas and apply them in a way that works for you and your people. So at the heart of the model are 3 themes. So you think of those as the kind of foundations of virtual intelligence. Any organisation that wants their employees to smash it out of the park in a virtual working world needs to have these 3 things in place. So to start off, I'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour of those 3 themes, and then we'll look at how you can benchmark them and bring them to life. So the first theme is all around knowing your stuff. At the heart of a hybrid and first environment, a great digital ecosystem has to exist, one that has all the tools to replicate in-person interactions. And stepping into this new digital ecosystem is a bit like moving to a new city, except there's no house numbers, there's no street names, so you're pretty much having to find your own way. So unless employees know where they are, where these things are, what they're there for and how to use them, they're pretty pointless and actually they're a waste of subscription fees. So the second theme is around adopting the actions. So we all have different ways of working and they're based around our preferences, our needs, and to be honest, some of our habits that we've developed over time. Some people love using email, others prefer instant messenger. That's just one of a few examples that you may come across. And to try and accommodate all of this into your working environment can be very confusing and chaotic. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have spent plenty of time looking for that message and hunting across Teams, across email and across WhatsApp to locate it. So having ways of working that are clear enough for everyone to stick to makes things so much easier and smoother. And that's about forming consistent habits and etiquette that makes life more predictable and manageable for each other. And the third theme, trust is everything. So bonding with teammates is a not so secret formula to great collaboration. True bonding only happens when trust exists. And there are 2 types of trust that matter. One is relational trust and the other is competence-based trust. So relational trust is built through respectful interactions in which people feel valued and listened to. And competence-based trust is essentially believing somebody has the ability to do what they say they will do. And this is one of the areas that remote working has had the most impact on, because trust in reality is built by spending time together, not always round work-based tasks. Social bonds are formed through verbal and non-verbal communication in ways that can convey understanding, empathy, and shared concern. That's much harder to achieve through a screen because we lose that depth of interaction and the cues that come from in-person exchanges. We can only see this bit of ourselves. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the 3 themes. And hopefully that's kind of started to spark some reflection for you. And perhaps you're starting to think about your own experience. But how do you measure the themes? How do you benchmark their existence in your everyday and across your organisation? So you'll be pleased to know we've got a very robust but straightforward way of doing that. We've stripped it of the jargon. We've not got any bells and whistles. It's very user-friendly and easy to understand, as most powerful IC usually is. So I'm talking about questions and conversations. And the following sample questions I'm about to share will help you get a measure of your virtual intelligence. They'll all touch on things that, when done well, can really lubricate the wheels of productivity. And as conversation starters, they'll surface possible barriers to connection and collaboration across your teams. As well as using them for polls and surveys, they can provide a baseline that you can then use to track your effectiveness of your efforts. So here we go. In terms of know your stuff, it's questions around Are the people kept well informed and updated around digital tools? Do they have access to training to use those digital tools and platforms effectively? Is it clear which channel or tool to use for a specific communications action or ask? In adopt the actions, do we have clear and consistent ways of working in our virtual workspace? Do we honour and respect our agreed ways of workings? And are we aware of others' time and needs in a digital environment? And finally, trust is everything. Are we investing time in getting to know each other personally? Do we feel connected to our colleagues and parts of our team? Feel part of a team? And do we trust those colleagues to do what they say they're going to do and do it really well? Now, you might be thinking that IC is not responsible for any technical training about how to use digital tools, and you'd be right. But it can certainly spark the debate and highlight the need on behalf of everybody within the organisation, as well as doing that all-important job of translating technical training lingo and hefty user manuals into something short, snappy, and easy to get hold of. So in having these conversations, you've got a benchmark. Let's turn to the actions you can take as internal communicators to make those foundations as strong as possible. In Know Your Stuff, IC is in the perfect position to inform, educate and signpost. When we welcome a new starter into the office space, the first thing we typically do is give them a tour of the building, show them what's where, who's where and how things are done. So from the system of the personal fridge space to who makes a brew and the all-important stationery cupboard, we kind of cover it off to make them feel comfortable in their environment. And in a digital environment, the equivalent is a helicopter view of all the tools, the platforms, the channels you use, available with a guide on what to use and when, such as emails of formal company-wide announcements, the intranet for business updates, and being clear about the benefits of each and how they all fit together. And by encouraging the consistent use of tools such as Loom or Mural for collaboration, it means people get familiar and comfortable with these things and crack on rather than trying to fathom out how to use them each time they log on. And whilst these topics are usually covered in an induction, it's also hugely valuable to remind people of what they have available on an ongoing basis, because it's amazing how often we lose sight of these things. We're in the thick of the working day. It's worth signposting to people where they can tap into training and skills that will get them up to speed with those digital toolkits. And that's a real quick win for fast-tracking virtual intelligence capability. You might want to create some forums for sharing tips and tricks or even get-arounds on pain points on things like Viva Engage, just to help people be more productive. And facilitate discussions around what's potentially missing from that digital ecosystem or any areas for improvement. In terms of establishing and embedding the role model, how here culture really comes into play. IC is in a privileged position, being able to influence behaviours, to lead the discussion around expectations and how values guide virtual working etiquette, creating and communicating standards around ways of working. It helps establish healthy habits that make things more predictable and understandable. And that's really important, as the way we behave in the virtual working world has a direct knock-on effect on those around us. Our actions can so easily help or hinder others, much more so than working together in the office. If you can't see someone, you have absolutely no idea if they're busy, available, or working on that deliverable you absolutely must have by the day's out, which leads neatly to the first action that will bring adopting actions to life. So in the virtual world, colleagues have no idea whether you are sitting, no idea whether you're sitting at your desk or grabbing a brew. Unless you keep your status up to date and your diary bang up to speed, people don't know what your plans are. For example, imagine you're due to deliver a presentation at 3 and you're waiting on a colleague to answer a critical question beforehand. The clock's ticking, you've got 25 minutes left, and their status says gone for lunch back in 45 minutes. You have no idea when that 45 minutes began. You're not sure whether to wait or go and look elsewhere. And that's adding to the stress of an already stressful situation. Simply by adding the specifics, gone to lunch back at 1:30, everyone's clear about what's happening. And when you get a call, make sure people know to put their cameras on. It's not about checking up on other people, but it's about building trust And nobody enjoys talking to a blank screen, wondering what's going on at the other end. It's even harder to read that body language when the language is cloaked in darkness. When everyone's visible, accountable and present in this way, it shows respect for each other and keeps those wheels of productivity running more effectively. The second crucial aspect of this part of the model is about being courteous. So we found common courtesy became one of the most important virtues in our remote working environment. That's things like preferences around meeting times to accommodate life's commitments. Avoiding school runs for parents with small children is a great example of that. Turning up to meetings on time or letting people know you're going to be late. Putting gaps in between meetings so people can take a comfort break. I think we've all sat on Teams calls throughout the day hoping that we're going to get 5 minutes at some point. And minimising those background disruptions where possible. While some people might enjoy the clattering cafe background for white noise, it does make hearing people on conference calls very difficult. And another big one for us at H&H was around respecting downtime. Because we embrace flexible working, we have our early birds and we have our night owls. And it's really important that someone trying to relax on an evening doesn't want a barrage of questions from a colleague who's just hit their peak work zone. And again, with that, simple communication is key to nailing the etiquette. So what does courtesy look like in your organisation? Ask your people, encourage them to be open with each other and make sure it's all communicated effectively, because it'll help everyone enjoy a more respectful, harmonious virtual environment that brings out everybody's best. And then trust is everything. Building relational trust is that much harder in that virtual environment. Most meetings are arranged with a specific outcome or topic in mind. And because often only one or two people connect at once, it's way more difficult to enjoy ad hoc chats with multiple people bouncing off each other at the same time. And that can be really lonely and isolating place if we're not careful. So it's critical to nurture an environment that encourages social interaction, gives permission for people to get together virtually for something really simple but super important, and that's the art of developing relationships. Internal communications can absolutely lead the way with that culture, using a conversational tone, avoiding cold corporate language, and injecting people stories that go beyond the workplace. Explicitly encouraging and creating those moments where people can get together and work and bond on something other than work. And remember to include ways for everyone to interact and respond to communications. It could be as simple as quick polls in team meetings, inviting thoughts and opinions, emails and posts, or creating virtual activities that stimulate interaction and discussion. Because that ability to participate can make a huge difference to remote workers who may be feeling disconnected. It's also worth creating opportunities for people to come together in a virtual setting for more relaxed purposes, perhaps cooking together, sharing or talking about favourite books. And in our agency, we formed a community of people around physical activity. So even though we're not together, we are all exercising and sharing our experiences. We share and celebrate those times away from the laptop. And through this, we each get a glimpse of each other's lives behind the work curtain. And it's really strengthened our sense of personal connection immensely. So that other type of trust that we talked about that's vitally important in building strong working relationships, that competency-based trust. Working remotely does mean a lot of doing the do away from each other. You get together, you agree what's going to be done, and everyone goes off. But then you put your faith in the fact that it will get done and done well, your own contribution included. Building this kind of trust comes with positive experience. And individuals can take steps towards creating that sense of trust by always doing what they say they're going to do, making sure it's done on time and to a high standard, being responsive with communication. If there's not enough time to respond properly, an acknowledgement that a message has been read and received takes the weight of worry off the sender. But IC can enhance this across the organisation too. We can shine a spotlight on the achievement of teams and individuals and celebrate people's contributions by listening carefully to what people are saying and demonstrating what you've heard and understood by acting on it and playing it back to them. And finding ways to stimulate the exchange of expertise, ideas, knowledge between people, teams and locations. You could use Viva Engage or Workplace as a channel to support this. And show what it means to take pride in your own work and having high standards by setting the example in communications. So that's the model in its entirety. And I'm sure you've realised, as I did, that internal communications is in an incredibly privileged position to be able to enhance virtual intelligence, and it comes all down to great communication. And the outcome has so many benefits, not least of which is clearing the path of those typical barriers that can hamper productivity, creativity, and collaboration. You'll have contributed to creating the ideal conditions that make up a pro-hybrid environment, one that considers equally the needs of remote workers as those who work together in person. And by investing in virtual intelligence and proving our ability to work successfully together in a virtual world, we can help celebrate the possibilities of remote working. Because it seems such a shame to lose it after discovering how incredibly life-enhancing and beneficial it can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So much to process there, actually. And from the title of the talk, what I kept writing down repeatedly there was human relationships, respect, and trust. And just how important it is now where the tools are becoming even more sophisticated. So showing that respect and active listening, because more than ever, because there are AI tools coming out now, I believe, where you can just sit there, get a summary, and actually respond to you whilst you're at a meeting. So if you're not present and visible, how do you know you're actually interacting with a human at some stage? And even at this point now, and they're invested in what you spent some time and effort on. So really, really interesting, and so many great active bits of advice about how to go about doing that. So I thank you. I do have one direct question, if that's okay.
Go for it.
And you don't have to be the authority because nobody knows the answer. But I'd like to get your take. I'd like to get your take. With the drive from CEOs, some CEOs, the majority, if you look at the stats, to return to office, and they may return to office full time, is that just because they don't trust their people, or giving them credit? Are there clear stats that we are more productive remotely if CEOs are being potentially so blinkered and not trusting their people and wanting to return to the office?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question. I would hate to diss 76% of CEOs around. Yeah. I think the reality is it's too early to say. Based on we're out of lockdown. It feels like millions of years ago, but actually not that long ago. I think it's probably too early to tell. I think there's some comfort in going back to what you know. I mean, as humans, we are creatures of routine. And as a CEO, there is a certain reassurance to seeing everyone in front of you. So I wonder if there is a journey for some CEOs around virtual intelligence themselves. An understanding. But I mean, the voice of the employee is very loud. That the majority of people are looking for a blend, whether that's, a day at home or 3 or 4, that's very individual, but some degree of flexibility. And, people did, they were very productive and very collaborative during lockdown. So it feels like potentially it's a hammer to crack a nut when actually, being able to blend the two together in a way that works for your organization feels to me to be the way forward.
Makes a lot of sense to me, and thank you for your perspective. Just want to see if we've got any comments from the crowd. Not as yet. So just want to say thank you so much. And this obviously is available on demand, and I'm going to go back and watch it because there was a lot in there. A lot of them are awesome elements and thought-provoking content. But yeah, I might go watch again this evening. So, thank you so much. Thank you for your continued support. And please, everybody watching, do go check out H&H. As you've heard from Cathy, they really know their stuff and leaders in this area. So just thanks so much, Cathy, and hope you have an awesome rest of the summer.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.